Hey Brandon, how's it going?
Good, good.
Are we close enough to 4 o'clock that we could start?
1 second.
Did a whole bunch we go through point by point and kind of work it out.
Thank you.
I was really unprepared. I didn't bring anything.
I usually bring this huge folder and never look at it, and then I put stuff in later, so I thought. I'm gonna
Just
just
like
check. My
purge
purse-
that.
My purse is heavy. Yeah. I just looked at it all in my phone.
Oh, that's a good idea. Pull that up. That's a good.
Yeah, that's how I didn't, I usually get Mr. Aggie to print it for me, but I just read it on the phone. Wasn't that much to do really, unless I missed a whole bunch.
Beautiful. Yeah, I got it.
Got any good digs lined up for the summer?
Don't really. Yeah, no, I got a couple in the spring. I think one starting in. One that's just the first week in March. And then my usual big one's cut down.
God's
to only a
here.
month
Nice.
This year, so. Just start filling.
Get it by the deadline. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing good. I had,
Some filling in.
Yeah.
the manager's office too. It's hard to get a plan.
Hey, you made it.
You know, I don't know if we should have, but Scott Stevenson, nice to meet you. On this. I think it was last spring. Okay. Maybe like. Yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah, right, yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to have you here. It's good. Okay. So there you go. There's a party.
Good, and you?
Doing good. I saw Jackie came in today.
Oh, yeah.
Have we got a lot of stuff in there for us?
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna need a lot of entertainment here, by the way. since you're
Entertainment?
going
Oh,
with-
I thought we were just doing snacks.
Oh, snacks would work.
Yes, that's mine. We're not.
Oh,
Caitlin, can you hear me? We can't hear anything.
Oh, they usually tell me to hide my head under the desk.
Yep.
Try again, Bob.
Want me to go again? When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First of all, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are a complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commissioners and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with detailed specifics enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precluding the action for damages in circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any applicant, any participant may request an opportunity to present further additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states that the commissioners must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period at least 7 days. Okay, we got done with that. Are there any members of the commission? Here we go. I love this French word here. Apata?
Ex parte.
Ex parte.
Our parte. Any members has our parte contact conflicts of interest or bias that would prevent them from rendering an impartial decision on this matter.
Oh,
Hearing none. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to challenge the qualification of any member of the commission? Hearing none, we'll go from there. The public hearing is now open. And I will call at this point for a staff report. Did I
All
miss
right.
anything?
I don't think so.
Good. Thank you.
All right. So, all right. So I'm just going to share the staff report for HLC application 212. The applicant is Colin Jensen from Thesis Studio Architecture. Okay, so this development is occurring at 301, 303, 305, and 307 East 2nd Street. The classification is a historic primary building, and it's called the Pioneer Building in the downtown commercial historic district. The current use is a commercial downstairs with offices in the second story. The applicant is proposing to change the second story to residential units while keeping the retail floor.
Hey, Caitlin.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have one more project designer who's been trying to get into the meeting. Is it possible to allow her in, Jen?
Yes.
I think she's in the waiting room.
Participants?
There we go.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. All
Yeah, no
right,
problem.
moving on. Yeah. So moving on. This is a vicinity map. You can see it is abutting Washington and East 2nd Street. A little bit of background about this building. So the Pioneer Building was first occupied by a general merchandising store. During this time, long caravans of freight wagons loaded with goods for gold regions of the Eastern Oregon departed from this corner. When the French family moved their banking business one block to the east, they sold the building to MSSRS Brooks and McFarland. The offices on the second floor included those of George Baker, jeweler in 1908, also Harry Lieb, jeweler, and A. Sufrit Insurance, and the land abstracts office of Lake and Bolton. As you can see, this is a historic photo of the Pioneer Building that the applicant provided in their application. So this is the existing conditions of the Pioneer Building. You can see that there is a large existing awning that divides the second story from the bottom of the building. There are wood windows on the second story that are a double hung wood sash. And you can see the cornice design that is on like the very top of the building. And, it's covered in stucco on the second floor. And then there's a mix of non-historic materials on the second floor. This includes some fox brick, stone veneer, some tile, and a large metal awning, as you can see. This is the facade on Washington Street. And as you can see, there is some existing painted brick on the second floor of this facade, and then the stucco. There's just a colored picture. You can really see how this was at one point two buildings that have been really stitched together to make one storefront. And that's the rear of the building that the applicant provided. So existing painted brick facade on the second floor, and then stucco on the rear. Okay, so this is the proposal that the applicant provided. As you can see, they are keeping the painted stucco. They will do a different color scheme with this application, and you'll see that in the upcoming slides. The windows of the second floor are proposed to be replaced with a single hung steel sash windows with divided lights. There will be no changes in the rough openings of those windows with this proposal. They will paint the awning to match the existing facade. They show some flower box details on the second floor, and they're keeping the brick on the Washington facade, but it will be painted to match their overall facade color scheme. And they will also be adding some additional new facade materials on that first floor of this development. So this is the renderings that the applicant provided with their application. As you can see, they're going for a more muted color palette here with a neon sign. And we'll just start really digging in here to all of the materials and our code here. So also a little background about it before I get too far along. The applicant did receive a conditional approval for a site plan review application from the Community Development Department for the second story offices to turn into residential units. And today what we're looking at is the facade of the building, not really what's going on internally. So this proposal does maintain that commercial front and really is just changing the use of the second story with some updated materials, which we'll talk about here. So taking a look at the streetscape here. So the commercial portion of the first floor will retain the commercial front with updated facade improvements, distinguishing each store what's kind of nice is that the storefronts on East Second Street, they are recessed. Their entries are recessed, which is compatible with our historic standards. And then, which is existing. And then the facade on Washington Street is flush with the sidewalk. The streetscape features an existing trash can for pedestrian use and 2 period street lights. So diving into some of the proposed materials here, I just kept an excerpt from our historic standards so we can take a look at, the materials that we have in our standards. So the first proposal that they have, well, part of their proposal is composite wood paneling. So this paneling would be below, in some areas below or hugging the large display windows on some of the storefronts. The applicant provided some examples of this composite material. As you can see, it's a dark in color and adds some dimension to the storefronts. They also provided a picture of the painted paneled storefront of the Commodore building, which you can find just below the large display windows in that building as well. They do feature a material on Washington Street. They listed it as siding. Now, this new siding will need to be illustrated on the site plan and really kind of let us know what the material will be. I want to make sure that it complies with the standards in our code. And so that is a proposed condition of approval from staff that the applicant illustrate what material they'll be using for the siding. And if you look, it's on the Washington side and it's a vertical lines. And so I did add a little bump out on the slide just so you can kind of see where they're proposing that in their projection.
So that's not on the second story, that'd be on the first story.
That is on the first story, correct. In addition, they are proposing a steel sash door entry with divided lights on the first floor. This is replacing an existing non-historic wood slab door on the Washington side of the building. In addition, they're proposing some black subway tile below some of the large display windows on the storefronts. And these tiles, the tile that is existing on these storefronts, the applicant has indicated that they have deteriorated over time. And so they are proposing to install new tile in the design layout that you can see on the slide below some of these display windows, as you can see on East 2nd Street. This was on the first floor as well. The applicant is proposing to install single hung steel sash windows with divided lights along the second floor, as well as feature some of that in the first floor steel sash door entry. So wood windows are described in the historic inventory for this building. So in the description, it specifically says double hung wood sash windows are present on the second floor. So replacing the windows with steel would not be compliant with historic standards, as wood windows are recommended for these second story windows. If the windows, obviously, we would want as staff to make sure if they do need to be replaced due to deterioration, that they are replaced with wood windows that match the original style. So staff is proposing as a condition of approval that the applicant utilize wood windows for any window replacements and alter the building elevations to illustrate this modification. And I just highlighted up there, you can kind of see the area where these divided light windows would be. In the application, the applicant, did a good job with serving additional buildings that were around. So what they picked out was, the Civic Auditorium has these types of divided lights windows, as well as the historic post office. However, in our historic standards, it talks about how each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, shall not be undertaken. Staff felt that providing divided lights on this building would be using architectural elements that are found on other buildings and not really representing these building features. So moving right along, the commercial front of this building shall be maintained, and specifically in our historic standards, it talks about new construction and rehabilitation should maintain the continuity of the multi-story buildings and the clear distinction between storefront and upper floor office or residences through the facade treatment and articulation. Staff felt that the applicant exceeded these expectations because you can see a very clear distinction with both the awning and the color scheme that differentiate between the residential uses up top, as well as the first floor commercial uses on bottom. So on the first floor, pardon me. They utilize, a large display windows. The first floor, as you can see in their projections, are recessed on the east second side. And the awning creates a pedestrian ceiling for shoppers and walkers. So taking a look at the awnings, this is an existing awning. And so we have some standards in our code that, apply to the, awnings and canopies are encouraged to be retractable fabric. But since they are existing with the building and they are not proposing to change any of their or replace any of their awnings, besides just giving it a fresh coat of paint and adding some bistro style or string lights underneath, staff felt that they did not have to adhere to these standards. And here's a close-up of their proposed lights underneath. In addition, this development is proposing a neon sign. So taking a look at the historic photos that the applicant provided, and this is encouraged in our code specifically for signs, you can see that there has been a lot of neon signs present in our downtown. And this is a close-up that they provided of signage on the Pioneer Building. And you can see, some neon light signs and projecting signs from this building. So this is the proposed neon sign. It's on the corner of the building, so it should not obscure any of the architectural features because it is just right on that corner there. Also, the applicant put in their narrative that they are going to encourage the existing signage if it's replaced by the tenants on the first floor, that they should utilize the historic standards in our code. That's a close-up of their design for the Pioneer Commons, and it even has a established 1881 on there. It's a nod to their historic history, whatever. But anyways, so staff has a couple of recommended conditions of approval. So I'll read them off for you here. Work shall be completed in substantial conformance to the pictures and proposals as submitted, reviewed, and modified. Applicant shall submit plans for a building permit with the City of the Dalles and then to Wasco County Building Codes. The applicant is required to notify the Community Development Department of any alteration of the approved plans. The applicant shall install or replace the second-story windows if required with wood windows rather than the vertical single-hung windows with divided lights and steel sashes. This modification shall be illustrated on the building elevations. No sandblasting is approved with this development. Any planned cleanings will be required to meet the standards set forth by the Secretary of Interior. The applicant shall describe the new siding material on their building elevations. This siding shall be compatible with all applicable standards in the Dallas Municipal Code, Chapter 11. And then some ongoing conditions is the applicant shall submit a sign permit for the proposed signage with this development, and the conditions of approval outlined in the site plan review notice of decision for this development shall be met. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Now is the time for the person that's gonna do this wonderful job to come out and sell us on the idea that you're gonna do a wonderful job. So you're a little bit dark there, but we know who you are. So go ahead and talk to us, Colin, and tell us what your idea of this beautiful place is gonna be. And then you have a nice young lady, I'm trying to think. Jean, okay. She can chime in too, but she'll have to give us name and address. All right, go ahead. Give us your name and address.
Thanks. Bob, right? Was that your name?
Yes, his name's Bob McNary, Chair
Okay,
McNary.
thanks, Bob. Sorry, we didn't hear you guys in the beginning, so I didn't pick up names, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So so I'm Colin Jensen. I'm a architect with Thesis Studio Architecture out of Hood River. I am the applicant, but by no means the mastermind of this project. I think that credit goes to Brandon.
Mr. Jensen,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. You need to state your mailing address for the record.
Oh, okay. 205 Oak Street, suite number 1, Hood River, Oregon, 97031. So with me is Jen Malmberg, project designer with Thesis Studio. And then of course, Brandon, I'll let you introduce yourself and state your address, Brandon.
Hey, everybody. I'm Brandon Rush. My address is 3204 Northwest 95th Place, Vancouver, Washington, 98665. It's great to meet all of you. Really excited to be part of this project in the Dalles, and really kind of obsessed with this old building, and hopefully we're going to be able to do right by it historically and do something special for the community. Do you want me to go, Colin, or you want to? Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe just start high level, and then I can talk a little bit about some of the facade aspects and things like that.
Absolutely. So I fell in love with the building when I saw it come up for sale, and after communicating with some of the other business owners in town, I saw the need for residential housing, which is relatively affordable. And I know we're not talking about the inside, but I'd still like you guys to know what my plans are. So essentially, I feel like there's a gap in the area for affordable housing, which is beyond builder grade. So something which is kind of stylistic and classy. I think about when, kids graduate high school and they're getting their first jobs, or they're, moving into college. Just because their price point of entry is kind of lower doesn't mean that they shouldn't have nice amenities. So we're going to go out of the way to step things above builder grade, like with real nice tile and murals on the inside and something very stylistic. And it's funny, we're talking historic, so I probably shouldn't throw this out there, but I'm actually pulling a lot of the influences from like Japanese culture, and the idea that you can fit a lot of creature comforts into a relatively small footprint. So working with Thesis, who are architects I really believe in, and I'm really enjoying working with, we're doing something which is, I think is going to be a meaningful to the community at large. As well as the commercial spaces in the basement, like all of those, the lower floor, all of those spaces are right now, the businesses are women owned and run. And so we have no intention of changing anything on the ground level until the time presents itself, naturally, if it does. But I've made the acquaintance of everyone down there, and have begun supporting those businesses. And I think it's a it's a pretty neat block and a pretty neat group of tenants for sure.
Yeah, so our approach in terms of the exterior and the historic preservation aspect of the project has been to really take a light touch, which obviously we're bound to do and driven to do, but also just feels like the right thing to do. And when it comes to the windows, for example, our thought process along those lines was not to try and replicate or create a faux look or anything like that, but really to address the fact that the windows are not operable and ultimately will need to be not only operable for comfort, but also operable for life safety and egress. And so we found what we thought would be a strong, existing precedent with divided lights and so forth. And I think there's some great examples in many locations, not just the Dalles, of how that can look, but then again, also understanding the historic, precedents of wanting to maintain the wood windows as an inventory item and so forth. So totally understand the perspectives there. Just wanted to give background on our reasoning behind that. In terms of the lower level, our scope of work really is primarily second floor. However, we felt that in order to create a cohesive overall composition, there is work needed to be done on the pedestrian level, and that mainly has to do with just the kind of grab bag of facade treatments that is happening right now. You've got a little bit of everything, and on the one hand, it's nice to differentiate the different storefronts, but at the same time, it'd be nice to do that in a way that used period appropriate materials. And so that's what we're trying to come forth with on some of the tiles and things like that. We're using very classic tile modules and patterns that are going to be both resilient, because it is on the ground floor and it is going to take some weathering and things like that, but also timeless and will look elegant when it's done. So that's kind of our thought there. I think I can keep going, but I don't want to. Yeah.
I think you pretty well covered it. Is your young lady there want to identify herself and add anything at this point before we go on to the next stage?
Jen, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. There's something wrong with her.
Oh, this time it's not us.
Okay. At this point, is there any questions from the commissioners themselves on questions you would like to ask?
Commissioner, I think Jen was able to offer some comment. I think she fixed her microphone.
Did she get a microphone?
No?
Jen, can we hear you? Nope. Well, I'll talk for Jen. Jen was actually very, very instrumental Jen was very instrumental actually in preparing the historic application, and a lot of kudos go to her for the historic, well, first of all, the renderings, which hopefully really painted a good picture for you guys. And then also the signage design and the historic research for precedents and so forth. All of that is due to Jen. So I'm glad that I gathered that it was well received, and I'm glad that it was. So thanks, Jen.
All right, now I'll go back. Does there any one of the commissioners have anything to ask of this applicant?
The sash windows upstairs. Oh. That's say my name. Right? Okay. The sash windows on the second floor where the residents are going to be, you're going to repair those, and there'll be opening windows Is that correct?
Yeah, they are operable windows. They're
I
just
I thought you said they were not operable. I didn't hear
well,
it right.
they're if time has rendered them inoperable. The weights are likely faulty or have fallen off their ropes. The painted shut in some cases. The panes are broken and the glazing is failing. So they need a lot of work. Like in most, were it not a historic building, they would be absolutely a tear out and replace type of situation.
You're gonna get a sash guy in to redo the weights and the ropes and all that. Is that the plan?
So
The-
I'll actually throw in there. So it's strangely my family owned a window company when I was younger.
Oh, good.
So I grew up actually changing out single hung windows. And I think because we had, one of the reasons we had talked about going the steel wrought iron route, it was energy efficiency, and then just they'd be, secure for another 100 years. The existing windows have rot in places. Some of the windows were even broken. We had like a squatter. Once I closed on the building, there was someone like living up on the second floor who had broken a couple of windows. So whether or not they can be fully repaired is questionable. I've actually been in contact with people that do restoration. There's a very good chance that we'll have to look at like modern fully wood window products that are currently on the market. I know that I know that it would be really nice to maintain these existing windows, but we'll just have to do further discovery to see what the
They
potential
do
is.
make really good wood sash window reproductions. I mean, they make brand new ones that are exactly like the old ones. So
Yeah,
they're
and I think that's more
not
than
cheap, but
likely.
it's worth it.
Right, and I get it. I mean, they're super beautiful, and with some of the new wood sash, we could actually address the R value and insulatory stuff, which is, just to make it more energy efficient. So yeah, we'll definitely be digging into that, but they have filled us in on the reality that we can't do, composite or wood on one side and another material on the other, that they need to be true wood windows. So we will
Okay.
definitely go that route.
Thank you.
Got it.
So Brandon, I was just curious if is it cost prohibitive for the project if you have to use these sash windows?
Very. Yeah,
Okay.
very, very. So these windows on average are 4 to 5 times more expensive than the other composite equivalent. So it does. I mean, I'm just being real honest. It does greatly affect the quality of the interior spaces that I'm gonna be able to build. So it'll change like kind of the whole thing. But I mean,
So we had, oh, excuse me, go
No.
ahead.
No, you go ahead. That's
Okay, so we had a similar situation in the Honnold building, which is a few blocks to the east of this location, where they did a residential remodel of the entire upstairs.
Hmm.
And we, of course, required as our code, wood replacement windows or repair the existing windows. And they actually found a contractor to repair and put insulated windows in those spots, and later came back to thank us for that, because it cost them significantly less money than replacing with all new wood sash. So definitely something you want to look at, not just for the aesthetics and the historic preservation, but also economically as well.
fantastic.
I kind of took a chance to look at the windows from the outside today. And definitely there are some challenges there, right? Where on the Second Street facade, where there's been air conditioning units put in, it looks like the lower sashes have been significantly modified to put those air conditioning units in. So,
Mhm.
it's not like every window is going to be repairable, but it definitely looked like at least half the windows were repairable.
Definitely.
When we restored, sorry to jump back in, but when Mr. Eggy and I restored Trevitt House, which is on 4th Street, it's an 1868 house. There were windows that were just gone, but from pictures we could see it. And we got the wooden double sash windows for the back and the side. it was more expensive. I think it was Gelwind.
Geldwin.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a Oregon company and it wasn't cheap, but I mean, it was a beautiful job. But if you have any kind of structure there and you can get the craftsmen that can do it, like Eric said, that would be a really a good, another option, a better option money wise, but.
I appreciate
anyway, Just
that.
I'd throw that in there.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, is there an approved list of wood windows that this commission has, or should we expect that if we find I know, for example, Marvin, Geldwin, is there further scrutiny of the sash and things like that the commission would have at that point, or it would...
I'm not sure about that. I just remember the company because my girlfriend from high school's husband worked there and I tried real hard to get a discount. It didn't work. She couldn't even get a discount.
Nice.
So I remember that company just from that. It's not from a list, but Eric might know. Do we have anything like that?
No, I don't think we have a approved list of windows. Basically, if the window needs to be replaced, we want it typically in the past, we wanted it replaced with a window that's as near a match as possible.
Okay. And we would demonstrate that via, like, let's just say because Geldwin is a great example, we would send you a cut sheet or something like that, and you would say, this looks good.
Yeah, typically we've let staff do that kind of level of approval.
Yes, and so part of the conditions of approval would be to submit new building elevations as well, illustrating those new windows. So staff can ensure that it is a like for like or as close as possible match.
Okay.
Based on the Honlin building and him having the windows repaired, is there a way that I could get in touch, or one of you could reach out and see if that's okay for me to be in touch with them? Because I'd love to get the information of that person, just because they are few and far between, people that do repairs, especially of this level in the Dalles. So that would be great information.
Victor Johnson, they did a tutorial kind of thing at he has Herbeling House on 4th Street. He's one of the fools of 4th Street that have done old houses up. And he did like a couple-day thing. Were you there, Eric, for that?
I missed that.
I think my husband went, but at least he should have been there. He said he was. Anyway.
The old historic window excuse.
That's good.
Anyway, he'd be a good source for you, Victor Johnson. He's a local historian, musician guy.
Staff, would it be helpful if commissioners had a resource that we could direct it to you and then pass that on to
Absolutely.
the applicant?
Yes. Yeah. So if you all have time after the meeting to shoot me an email with that contact information, and I can put in some contacts that I know with via the historic window workshop that we did earlier this year. And so I can connect you guys. No problem.
I'm just curious how the commission felt in just aesthetically about leaving aside the discussion of steel sash or iron wrought windows versus wood. What did you think about divided lights? I know what Caitlin said about, it's this building's never had them. I think we internally felt a little bit like we liked the scale break. It helped sort of drive the delineation between commercial to residential. And I kind of feel like it just also gives a little bit of more visual interest. But what are your thoughts on that? And I'm fine if you shoot me down completely on it.
I think it's divided lights aren't really appropriate since it never had them. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a tie-in though? Because you have the Granada across the street, right? Is there like a possible tie-in? And if we're talking about neon sign, it feels like we sort of set a precedent with David Benko's project and bringing neon signs in through downtown. I wasn't part of that project, but I'm just kind of curious because we did sort of establish something along those lines.
Yeah, I think the signs are different, right? They were seen as kind of an art installation. And this is seen as a restoration, at least with the window parts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Building had neon signs in the early pictures, the historical pictures on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just didn't have the divided lights. Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's like separate.
Commissioners, please speak into your microphone.
Is that me?
Oh, yeah, bless.
Let's scoot in. Do you want to say it again?
yeah, I think it just kind of goes against one of those standards, right? The false sense of historic development. It at least looks like, at least for most of the historic period, it didn't have divided lights, and they were probably happy that it didn't have divided lights, right? You have these nice big windows not broken by divided lights. It was probably kind of one of those original design elements that they were quite proud of. So
Okay.
I had a question, just kind of, can I get your guys' thinking of why you're gonna go with composite paneling on the ground floor?
Yeah, again, we were just sort of looking for creating a new palette of differentiation between the retail spaces. We kind of read that as being a goal of the code, is kind of using materiality to delineate between the various spaces. And so, being that we have 4 different retail spaces down there, we wanted to essentially come up with 4 period appropriate materials. Obviously in the past, those were done with, cast iron. That's, not really practical today. So we figured, by creating a panel detail, using, materiality that when painted looks convincingly like it could have been a cast iron type detailing, that was kind of the goal with that.
So maybe I'll take this opportunity to share a story. When I first moved to town 30 years ago, there was a woman that had an antique store up on 12th Street or something like that, and named Nadine Dunn. And she was quite a local character, but I once talked to her about historic preservation, and she had said that she had the cast iron columns that had been removed from the Pioneer Building downtown. And so at that point, I asked her if I could see them because I got really excited. I thought, oh, that'll give someday somebody will be able to put those columns back on the building. And she was always reluctant to show those to me. About 5 years ago, she passed away and they had a big estate sale. And out in her yard were cast iron bits.
Oh, no.
It looked like what happened with the cast iron facade was that it got cut up by torch and then hauled away, and she ended up salvaging what had been hauled away. So I have a few pieces of that. So, I mean, I could contribute that to the project. It might at some point,
I'd love to see that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the history of that building is so rich. It's so incredible. It's funny because so many people don't know that, the Dalles was the hub, not, Hood River and not Portland even. It was like, this is like all trade came through that route. So that building, especially being in the basement of that building, it's something else. It's these giant stacked boulders on top of each other, which I was at first was like, oh no, what does this mean for, for the structure of the building? Luckily, it's a good thing. But I mean, that building's definitely seen some life. It's interesting. There's even like little, I think it almost seems like servant housing in the basement, these tiny little spaces with little raised restroom. And it's pretty incredible. If any of you want to come and take a look at some point too, I'd love to have you out.
Hooray, I'm in.
That'd be fun.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We'll schedule through staff. How about that?
Yeah.
And then Caitlin can just designate the days she wants to go. Yeah. Get you out of the office.
Oh my God. Well, that would be
Um,
great.
I was just kind of curious, what time period are we looking at this as restoring back to, or that we're kind of seeing as the time period that we're analyzing? Because I've seen a number of dates here and a number of modifications that were 1930s, 1964, 1890. So what is our target on this, or what is the standard that we're going back to?
Yes,
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question. What's the standard we're going back to? If you could pin it on a year, no, because this building is a story, right? And so what we want to do is preserve the story. And so there are all of these elements, and some of them have been faux modifications to after, like the veneer stone and things like that. But as this building was once two buildings that were stitched together, that's still the story of the building and the life that we would like to preserve. We obviously don't want to create two separate looking buildings just because at one point there was. So that's not really giving you much of a concrete answer, but that's my take.
I think typically our goal is to preserve what's left of the original structure, understanding that a lot of these places have been modified over time. And that if there's going to be significant remodification, then to try and get it kind of closer to its historic appearance. Here, I mean, that lower facade has just been kind of
A hodgepodge.
really messed up. And I can see the desire to try and kind of make it more presentable and more kind of aesthetically pleasing, I guess.
Right, because if it's my understanding is correct, that the historic district, the time period is 1900 to 1920. Is that correct? Is that kind of the designation for it?
I would need to check. I don't know.
I think it goes from 1860s to 1920s.
Okay, so
And
when I
as-
was working on the project with Don Hurt for that sculpture park, that it was sort of that inclusive period of 1920. That was kind of what we were looking at, right? As far as materials and what we wanted to use. And so I'm really curious if we have these facades that are 1964 or 1930s, that's outside of that designation. So it seems most appropriate with what they've already done is that they're returning it back to something that's more consistent with the 1890s.
The original build.
Yeah, with the original build, which it's, and you pointed out the original structure, but we're really talking about facade on all these things. So there's just, it's a little sticky in my opinion. It's like, where are we going? What are we going back to? And then
Back
you
to the
know,
beginning.
yeah, back to the beginning. So then, that kind of comes back for me, back to the lighting. Like, so what period are we talking about with that? And what would be the standard for that? Not to be objectionable, but I think that, one concern that I have is that if we create situations where it's cost prohibitive for people to come in and make these efforts, and they definitely have demonstrated a concerted effort to bring it back to an early level, then it seems appropriate that we would meet them in the middle and make it kind of beneficial for both parties, especially in this instance where they're really putting a lot of effort in with the facade and paying special attention to it. And I think Brandon pointed out that if the interior suffers because of the window situation, and hopefully we can offer support. And I think there's also, staff maybe knows this better than I do, but there may be some grant opportunities for them, or maybe SHPO, anything, something like that. But, I think that there's kind of give and take within that.
Yeah, there's definitely the Diamonds in the Rough grant program that Oregon SHPO has that something like this would qualify for, because they're definitely into helping restore downtown facades.
And I would think
Something to look at.
even Main Street would be something that they can investigate.
Yep,
you know.
there's the Main Street grant program as well.
Right. And for you, Brandon, and your team there, that, the possibility is to maybe talk to Michael Held with Business Oregon. He's had a lot of experience. I've used him. I'm the director of the Dallas Arts Center, historic building, 1910. And so he's been a tremendous resource for me in terms of finding grant funding and those opportunities to help with the facade, because it can get very expensive. So that might be some resource in there.
Yeah, I think the last facade review that we did with this particular building was the awning that's over on that southwest corner. It had been during that earlier 1960s, 1970s modification was covered with wood shake. It looked a little bit.
Wow. I haven't seen much shake roofing out in these parts.
So definitely that choice of the metal was an improvement over that and cost effective as well as an
Yeah.
improvement. So, I mean, that's what we typically try and work with folks, realizing that, as Caitlin said, these buildings are a product of 100 years of development and change in town. So there's no getting it back to 1881, but
Right. And we have standards, in our code too about materials that are consistent with like the downtown core too. And that, in our code doesn't really say like, well, you need to get it back to the original year. It really is just saying these are the materials that should guide you, towards best practice and consistent, cohesive downtown look.
I guess it just sort of strikes me that second story windows, which aren't necessarily viewed as easily to the public, it's almost secondary to maybe the impact that they have with the facade and then also with the interior. I don't know if that goes outside of our jurisdiction. I know at National Historic Buildings, it's just kind of the exterior. I know that from my own experience with our building. But, if that's something we're really emphasizing and enabling them through some of our decisions to do that, maybe has more impact for our community and for these types of projects.
And I don't want to belabor it because I want to show so much respect, and I understand that I'm coming from the outside into this community. But with just to piggyback on what you said, the tough part about those windows, it's not just financial. It's the fact that that single pane glass, you have tenants, and just the way that it's glazed in there, like there's going to be constant issues. They're going to get broken all the time just because of tenants of, these are going to be apartment units. They're going to get shattered. They have like no insulatory value whatsoever. And they will be a constant nightmare. One thing that I thought about, and maybe this isn't the forum, and maybe I just we'll just let it go. But I saw wrought iron as being one of the materials, and we came across steel sash, but I'm pretty certain we could do something that looks almost identical out of iron with just a single center grid and just like they are now. And I actually have a really good source for those, they're beautiful, and it's a really, really high end. And maybe it wasn't completely specific to that building, but it definitely is specific to the era. So just throwing that out there, but I'm just to be completely real, that the chances of us being able to fix all the sashes and bring those windows back is, just based on my experience, is pretty close to nil. So it'll either be a modern wood window with insulated units, which I don't think will look any better, or it's going to be the steel and iron equivalent of the new thing. So that's just full disclosure. Yeah.
So not to belabor this, but I think it's an interesting point that Brandon's making here, is that if we're doing facade work, and one could argue that what he just described is some facade work, and then we're actually increasing the value of that and making it more livable for the people that are going to be there. If we're trying to really revitalize the downtown, then that seems like an appropriate way to go. And I think what we're getting back to with the 1964, the 1930s, there hasn't been a consistent precedent with this building specifically for the preservation of any facades. And I think there's a balance that needs to be achieved between the historic nature of a building and then the reality. And I think people that were in the 1930s, 1964, any of these times where they're going with the best materials that they had, as they probably did in 1890, right? So it's just an interesting dilemma. And I think it's a consideration, and this city is going to be changing a lot, and I think we're going to be part of that.
Thanks for your
I,
comment.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, and obviously it goes without saying we would never walk into this meeting and throw out the word vinyl or even
Right.
fiberglass. So
Yeah. I mean,
I would
commercial
like
windows
to
exclusively. I'm sorry. Go
ask
ahead.
question that may be way out of line because I don't understand what's happened. When this building was originally constructed, was the upstairs that time part of the merchantary store, the merchant store? Or was it living conditions at that time? And it does have a bearing on what I'm driving at is I've gone over your print here 2 or 3 times, and I don't really see where your entrance is going to be for the apartments on the upper floor. Which is it going to be on Washington Street?
So there is an entrance right now on Second. And then for ADA egress, there will also be another entrance that is put in next to the Sunflower Vision on that side. So those will be the 2 forms of egress. So there will be one on Washington and one as well on Second. The one that's existing on Second.
the door that Caitlin was talking about, which we were proposing as a steel sash door with side light, that used to be a essentially like a coal drop.
Okay, that's the one.
That used to be either like a utilitarian basement access or coal drop point, and we are actually cutting in on the interior a new staircase for life safety exiting, and that will be the second point of entry / egress for the upstairs.
I just couldn't. Why did you pick that one?
Because there's an existing door that leads to those offices on Second Street.
Beth, did you have comment while they're working on that?
I'm just reluctant to try to go to a different material than the wooden glass and the sash window, because once you do that, the next building goes, well, they did it and they did it. And pretty soon, where's the history in this town where things were built in 1860? We don't go to the 60s, because who would go back to the 60s where they changed stuff? I mean, come on. So I'm worried
Well,
when you're saying we get a really good product that looks as good as this, but
To calm
we've got a pretty special place here, this little village, and it's got a history that's real special. And I'm reluctant to try to change it. And, maybe you can't do the best Japanese interior or have to modify, but I don't know. I'm really for keeping those windows the same. It's a little thing, but it's kind of a big thing. If you're just trying to, we're working for history, not for developing.
And the wooden windows are described in the historical inventory on that building. They describe, like Caitlin said, that wood windows.
There you go. So I don't want to, I'm not against business and progress, but and I think what you're doing is terrific, but I'm for the sash windows, the wood windows. And that single pane glass costs a fortune. If you want to get a purists that really like history, they would love that. And people that might rent those places would think this is fantastic, because you can see the waves, and that's a feature. That's a feature. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
So I appreciate what you're saying. And I think what would be really helpful is if we, there was a question that they put forward is, do you have any resource that could help us?
You
Right.
mentioned Victor from that workshop.
Exactly.
And,
So
Eric had a good one.
exactly. So
I could show you the windows that we've replaced in Trevitt House, which is it's in the same district in our little guest house.
right. And I think this is a great point, Bev, is that there's a lot of experience that's here on the commission, and that maybe that's something that we can set as a goal for this commission, is to not only be helpful with decisions and respecting and maintaining historic preservation, but also being a resource for people, right? Because this is going to continue to happen. Right. Right. It does, but just to like kind of formalize it, right? So if we were able to offer them, if staff were able to offer like, hey, this is the requirement, let's help you figure this out. Right. And now we're taking a really active role in maintaining our history here, and then also supporting businesses and people that are wanting to help our downtown. Right. So I just offering that maybe that's something we could think about as we go into the next portion, which would be the goal
When
session.
you were at the workshop on those windows, do you remember the guys that ran that? Do you have their other, you'd have their information.
I would be a liar if I said I went because unfortunately I could not attend, but I do have all their contact information and I've talked to them in length. So I can definitely give you guys those contacts, and maybe putting together some sort of resource, quick one pager for people would be a way to formalize it.
I think
You're
that,
happy
yeah.
with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's just I think it would be really nice for us. I think there's a lot of opportunities, and this is going to continue to happen, right? I mean, it's really, but I think it would be great to be a partner in this.
And
Yeah.
Bob's been doing it for years, and Eric, and they
Mm.
would tell you that's what we've been doing for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
You're new to the party.
Oh, I'm
we
new to
do
the party.
help you.
Yeah,
Encourage you. We're
yeah,
thrilled when people come to our little town and try to develop and spend their money.
yeah. And I hope I haven't been misunderstood with the intention. The intention is I recognize your skills and everything that you have offered, and then just to be able to make it even more accessible, right? So that's all I'm offering there.
And I, for one, I really appreciate your passion, and, and I'm the first to come forthright with absolutely. We are new to your community, and we want to make sure that we preserve and do right by your city, and pay homage to, this beautiful building. The second I walked into it, I literally fell in love. I'm sure all of you have been in the building, but the upstairs has these incredibly high ceilings, with transom lights above the doors in the hallways, and just like gorgeous wood trim. And of course, portions of it have been completely mutilated over the course of, this many years, and that just happens. But we're trying to keep as much of that intact as possible, because the original architecture really is something else. And I completely appreciate where you were coming from, all of you.
Thank you.
Somewhere we got to get back on track. So I'm going to try to make an effort at this point to get us back on track. Looking around for an opponent to this, I see none, I hear none. So we are past that point. We're past the point of calling back our applicant to rebuttal, I believe, unless somebody can straighten me out. So I am going to close the public hearing at this time unless someone else has a question. And we as commissioners will deliberate. Okay. The public hearing is closed. And now we as commissioners will deliberate on this application.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't have any trouble with the first floor, because the first floor has been kind of messed up.
It's only improvement. with
Yeah,
what we're
it's
doing.
only an improvement over what's been done in the past. The second floor, yeah, I just hate to see the kind of knee-jerk reaction to just rip out and replace windows, which at least some of them at least look original and repairable. So I don't know, maybe we can get away with, or the applicant can get away with kind of a mix of replacement windows and original windows.
And they're gonna paint that. It looks like it's a dark color. So it's amazing what a little lick of paint on that will make it all kind of uniform over that wood.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of redrafted condition of approval 4 a little bit, just because there was a little bit of, so my redrafting of it is: the applicant shall install replacement second-story windows if required with wood windows rather than the vertical single hung windows with divided sash and steel sash. This modification shall be illustrated on all building elevations. And then I added another section. The applicant will restore original wood sash windows where present and repairable. And I think that kind of covers it, because there are definitely some of those sashes that aren't there anymore, where the windows were taken out to put in the
ACs.
AC units. Those are definitely not there.
Everything of the wood windows been replaced by steel or metal, so everything's
No,
gonna stay the
It all
same.
looks
Okay.
wood
You don't-
right now. I mean, there's some that have screens that are failing and stuff like that, but those all look kind of tacked on later. And I think that gives them the option to replace what needs to be replaced and to keep what needs to be kept.
And removing the divided lights because that wasn't part of the historical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a,
Does that go with what staff has said, but just with that slight?
Yeah, it was a modification to
item
condition
4.
of approval number 4.
And would you mind just after you all are done deliberating, if you could repeat that condition, and I'll just write it into the slides and make sure I get it all.
Okay.
Good. Oh, it will be on the recording, and so they don't have to look at it again. Oh, they don't. You guys don't have to look at it again.
Hopefully I was close enough to the microphone.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I guess I'll recommend approval of historic landmarks application number 2212-22 with the revised condition of approval number 4.
I'll second that.
Well, now I'm going to ask questions. Is there any further discussion amongst the commissioners on this motion? Do you understand what he is? The conditions of approval on the back here with a modified one on number 4 is the only one you modified, right? Does everyone understand this is what we're going to vote on? And I hear no further discussion. I'm going to call for the vote myself. All in favor of this motion that we approve application HLC 212-22 with modifications in the conditions of approval on number 4, and I cannot tell you the exact. Do you have the exact wording of what we want to put in there, Caitlin?
Derek does.
I can but I can get it if it's repeated again.
Would you like me to read that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay.
The applicant shall install replacement second-story windows if required with wooden windows rather than vertical single hung windows with divided light and steel sashes. This modification shall be illustrated on all building elevations. And then the next sentence is the applicant will restore original wood sash where present and repairable.
Didn't you want to remove the divided lights from that?
Oh, yeah, I think divided lights was wood windows rather than the vertical single hung windows with divided lights. So I think that's,
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So, okay, the applicant shall install replacement second story windows rather than steel sashed windows with divided lights. This modification shall be illustrated on the building elevations. And the applicant will did you say restore? What did you say?
yeah, restore
Restore wood sash.
original wood sash windows where present and repairable.
Thank you. Okay.
Are we ready now to vote on it? Everyone understand what we're voting on? All in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Anyone that's opposed is not here. This application has been approved. We will come back to it a later date, a few minutes from now, and get the resolution, but we put the turkey in it there. Okay. Let's get our,
What does that mean?
well, I don't need it. We gotta go, yeah, there we go. The resolution is right next, isn't it? Well, then we'll just do it. Get it over with. I'll got it here anyhow. All right. You want to go past being a second?
Oh, better hurry.
You got that. You want to make this is the numbers you want for your resolution. You want to approve that resolution
And what
with
part,
the conditions.
Eric?
I'll move that we approve HLC Resolution 196-23 to approve HLC Application 212-22 Colin Jensen / Thesis Studio Architecture for the building at 301 East 2nd Street with the modified conditions of approval.
Second it.
There we go. Thank you. Everyone understand this resolution? In that case, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of passing resolution 196-23, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed isn't here again. We got that done. Now give me back to that agenda. See, I don't have to dig down the bottom of my pile. See what they give us. Now we go to goal setting, and I've got that right there. Okay. This is the time of year when we talk about what we'd hope to get done, and then we look back and reflect on a little bit, maybe we didn't. So, taking the proposed list of 2023, I thought I had a proposed list. Hey, did you give me one, Paula? I got 22, everything's 22 I got over here.
Yeah, everything's 22 because we haven't made 23 yet.
We haven't done the 23 yet.
We're still working on our 23.
Last year's, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Love to have I've got it on here, but I can hardly read it.
Oh, of course.
I'll be right back.
Thank you, Paula.
I'll also have it up on
Thought it was
screen.
right there.
Yeah.
No problem.
I gotta look very familiar, but
As we're going through that, I just had a question about the calendar and setting the goals. And so the city is on the fiscal cycle of July to June, right?
Guess I could have seen it there.
And so then we're using a calendar year for the setting of our goals. It just seems odd that if the budget and all those things are in line with that, then why are we on the calendar year? Does that make sense? Because it seems like a lot of things that the city already does is kind of on that calendar. Does that make sense?
I don't think it's a hang up. I just think it's a
Oh, it's just
thing that we-
curiosity. I'm just curious.
we probably do in January because our agenda in January is usually not too confining in a sense, is that the word I want to use.
Mm.
So we've just been doing goal setting. I don't know of a good reason why we've always done it in January other than tradition.
Well, and if I'm,
Historically correct.
well, and if I may add, if, talking about fiscal cycles too, the city starts planning their fiscal cycle in January. And so having goals come out right when we're coming out with our, budget, maybe if we do want to, if we're talking about things that we would like to apply for grants for and things like that, I mean, it may be more advantageous for us to start talking about it early.
I think that's an excellent point.
Paula, thank you so
If
much.
we're, as a committee, just looking at a lot of these items that you had from 2022, and we have staff that really is quite astute and very capable of grant funding and projects and so on. Just with my own experience with the Dallas Arts Center, working with Don Hurt, we were able to get quite a bit of support from the SHPO that helped with one of our goals, which is here of providing information and connection to the community to our history. So it seems like there's an opportunity with the commission to kind of look at that, you know, as what could we do as a commission to help foster these projects and push these things forward. And I know for Caitlin and I, it's a tremendous amount of work in especially with Don too, and putting the list together of the sites, working with the property owners to put those signs on and to do these different things. Now it's just a point of curiosity, and if there's interest for the commission to look at that, we have a ton of expertise here. And I know Eric would probably benefit from a lot of support just around the Chinese building. I'm just offering that as something, if we're considering goals and we're looking at what we're going to do as a commission, there seems to be a potential.
The financial side of it doesn't really affect us the same way. We're just looking at the historical facades of buildings. We're not really here to help entrepreneurs complete their projects as such. There's other entities that do that. That's probably
Agreed.
not we're more into keep preserving the history.
I agree. And it's not to bring in what the conversation was earlier. However, I think where I would head with that is the education of our community on the history. So what I was trying to point out is that with Caitlin and with Don Hurt as staff, we were able to get funds from SHPO to fund that project, which was and still is the AutoCast and the walking tour app. And then we were able to create that book, which then we're meeting one of those goals that we have out that has been outlined. So the offering, or what I was looking to kind of present to the commission, is that this can be a more active committee in our community of preserving our history as we do with what we do on the commission, but also secondarily supporting people like Eric and other organizations that are trying to do the same, right? So that we have more of an impact, and we do have that potential with staff and some of those resources.
So the goal starting with the fiscal year makes that much difference to the way it's here. I still don't understand that.
Well, I think what staff pointed out was that we're setting goals right now that can come into play when the city is currently making their budget, right? So the city is setting out their budget, and then part of that is, you know, what could we offer as a commission for some of these projects that would benefit our city, right? So then we could have staff, or we could ourselves present in the budget for the council to vote on. There's some projects that the commission would like to do. That happens with the beautification committee. Why not us?
So, and I just want to do a point of clarification. You know, I do not decide like what goes in the budget. I do not have that kind of jurisdiction, and I don't want anybody to have, you know, I don't want to present myself that way. But, you know, yes, like if we, you know, outline some goals here that, you know, we really want to see, you want me as staff to take a look at some grants for. So, I mean, like for an example, the Pioneer Cemetery, if you wanted me to look at the Oregon Cemeteries grant from SHPO to help to help with this goal, it helps me, I guess, like stay aligned with what the Historic Landmarks Commission is passionate about and what we kind of want to move forward as. But I mean, it's not necessarily like we're deciding what goes into the budget or not, but we do have these set of goals for me and us all to see that, okay, what do we kind of want to take? What are some action items? So like me applying for a grant would be one, or giving more info to you guys, or creating a document. Really, I mean, whatever kind of action items we want to come out of it. And this is my first goal setting with y'all. And so I want to really clue into what's most important to you and how we want to move forward. And so, yeah, I'm super excited. I think this is awesome. So I love a good goal setting. And if we can I would love to hear from you guys too, what we've accomplished so far, and how we can kind of see us, or you all, moving forward. Should we go through and read it first, or is it sufficient enough just to have it in front of you? We can go and read it if you'd like.
I think in the past, we've just basically gone through item by item and
Okay,
added things as needed and subtracted things as needed.
great. Okay. So our first short-term goal here, so in a 1 to 2 year time span, is encourage preservation and reuse of the Waldron Gitchell building.
How does that look, or what would that be?
Well, I think one of the reasons we have it in here is because our goals get presented to city council, right? So
That's
this
Mr. Rand.
exactly,
Commissioner,
well,
Randall.
the entire city council, so that,
Your liaison.
so part of this is to just let the council of our goals is to let council know what priorities of the Landmarks Commission are. So some of these, we don't really have direct. I mean, it is a city-owned building, right? So, and we are a city-owned commission. So I think that's one of the reasons that we've put this on here typically every year for the last decade or something, to try and move that project forward, to preserve that building and keep it as part of the community. I think it's had some useful use in that, every time it comes up, it gets kind of pushed a little bit further towards this goal. And I think maintaining this goal here now is still important, because I think until the city comes up with a long-term plan for the building, I think we should keep this as a goal.
I believe we just recently have had a meeting a couple months ago and determined to not push forward with the demolition. At least as far as that goes, it's being preserved as is. What the eventual outcome of the building will be is to be determined in the future. But yeah, in the meantime, there's no rush to tear it down. So
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think it maybe is an interesting dialogue, right? So the city is trying to figure out what to do with it. We have this historical background on it. Who's going to try to figure out what we're going to do with it, right? So I've heard many different organizations have different ideas around. So my curiosity is, how could this commission play a more active role in preserving the building, helping provide some sort of direction or opportunity in accomplishing it?
And I think the secondary one, the goal right under that, the update the historic ordinance and design standards, might play into that a little bit, right? Because we might rewrite the ordinance or modify the ordinance so that the commission is more than just an advisory panel, or gets more advisory kind of roles rather than just kind of a review panel. So that might be something that kind of would get written into ordinance.
And staff, what kind of role do you play in that?
Regarding the preservation and reuse of the Waldron Gitchell building?
No, in regards to historic ordinance and design standards.
Right. So, part of my job is to interpret the code and apply these interpretations to each application. And so updating the historic ordinance and design standards, that the code is a living, breathing document. I work, also in land use. And so land use is really current planning. And that code gets changed all the time. That's not necessarily applicable for every single portion of the code, but keeping it updated could be an option. And I think, I could look into grants for updating, the historic ordinance and design standards. Yeah, absolutely. So that could look like, updating the historic ordinance and design standards, staff could take a look, could look into funding opportunities to maybe I'll do
Because our
like,
design standards, we've now had kind of 20 years of experience with them. So we kind of know what works and what doesn't work in those standards. So it would probably be a good time to kind of review those so that there's less question. We have the
Yeah.
applicants going, well, it says encouraged, but what if I want to do something else? And so, if we kind of modify some of that language so that we really kind of can give people even more firm direction, I think it'd be helpful all around.
so would
It
you,
Probably save us a lot of time and would really help our community with having that. And I, just recognizing, the history that you have, the history that Chairman McNary has, and, kind of came up today when the chairman was talking. It's like, I think you're recognizing that you're getting older. And, I think we do have to consider, succession and consider how do we educate new commissioners, right? So I came on and it was challenging. I was like, what are we doing? What's going on? So, some of that education piece, and I know we've struggled with Robert's laws of orders at different point. So, those type of things like that onboarding and kind of creating the information for us to function at a high level.
So would you like to make another short-term goal of commissioner training, recruitment and training?
I think that would be a great one to consider.
so commissioner recruitment?
Should that be
I
under
mean-
continuous goals though? Because it would be kind of a continuous thing instead of just a short term.
That's a
Yeah.
great point.
Good point.
So go. Just a second. And if you'd like to, as a staff, I can forward any learning opportunities and the more traditional commissioner trainings like Robert's Rules of Orders. But if you guys would be interested in kind of hearing about these like continued education events,
Yeah,
it's
and-
fun.
In the
Robert's Rules and Order.
I will, yeah, I'm gonna link.
It's
No,
gonna
but
be
I do get
so much fun,
SHPO.
Bev.
I get
It's gonna be
different.
so much fun.
In the
Yeah.
past, SHPO has done kind of on-site workshops too. I don't know if they're going to be doing those. And they would do certified local government, which we have trainings.
Yes.
That might be something good to fund with our CLG grant
Yeah.
training opportunities. I know we have done it in the past ages ago.
Well, and I think it's such a great point because if I have any question, I call Eric. You know what I mean? And if there's something going on, it's just that he's such a great resource, and the more we foster that, and Forrest has a great interest in this, let's empower Forrest, and we've got to, I see that all the time. I saw that with the art centers, people are aging out. So if you have the opportunity to, educate somebody like Forrest or myself, that helps.
Like the plaster workshop that Dawn did, and then you've organized the sash window workshop, and there's historic workshops all the time. It's been going on for years. So those things
Yeah.
are existing.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I'm not, attacking or anything. I just I think there's part of what we're discovering or what I'm learning is that we can direct staff to help, but we also got to be considerate of the time and effort that she has. But I think the only thing that I'm just really like, how can we create that resource? It does happen. It has happened in the past. And, how can we keep facilitating that?
And that's how you came onto the commission, right? Through those training programs that were
Yes,
put
I
on
did.
by
Yeah.
The city.
I did basically like a city workshop where you got to go like one day you would go to a different department. So I did the airport, I did city council. You just do all the
Oh,
different
okay.
departments, and you get a cute little certificate saying that you completed the city's workshop. And so I wanted to do a commission after that, so I applied for a couple and talked to the mayor, and here I am because I'm a history major. So
And I was a history major, and Robert Clark is a history major, and he's owns a historic building in town. And, you know, I've had many conversations with him, and he'd be very interested in getting involved. So, you know, kind of creating those opportunities for people to really get involved, and people, you know, with Forrest and Robert and I's background, you know, how do we keep fostering that? We can foster Forrest.
So yeah, I think we got so commissioner training. So you know, training opportunities for maybe not just commissioners to learn the Robert's Rules of Orders, but maybe like help me out here. So I could keep it a little more broad and say, you know, commissioner trainings in here, historic and you know,
Procedural.
procedural. Thank you. Oh, okay. And I can also, you know, get these looking nicer before they're presented to council. So starting back at the top, let's try to punch some of these out. So provide a historic restoration workshop for local homeowners and contractors. Guess what? We did do a historic window workshop in partnership with the Clatsop Community College, and that's a big thumbs up for us. So, of course, though, if we want to keep this on the list, we can. If you want to kind of keep doing this on an annual or biannual basis, I can keep my ear to the floor.
you have any idea of the numbers of people that showed up to that workshop?
It was about, I think there's 7. Yeah, single digit.
Because we always get questions about the windows, and I felt windows would have been important and people would have attended, but I guess
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah, you know, maybe they're you know, maybe
Was that or was that Victor, the window one?
it was kind of something I took on just like during the transition between Dawn and I. So Dawn helped plan it, but Victor also was like the person who planned it. So, and then I also helped assist facilitating it into existence.
And the word just spreads around because we've been contacted on a underground historic nerd society that.
Well, yeah, it was posted on the website and Facebook, as well as there was emails like to specific people that I know that have done recent work. And so that's what we did for our marketing. Of course, there probably should have been a larger push for that. Oh, and then it was pushed with the community college as well.
You please use your outside voice.
Am I too quiet? Oh, okay. That's all.
I'll make a motion for longer microphones.
Or headsets.
It's terrible on your posture, Paula. I mean, look at us.
All right, we're gonna keep on track
Okay.
here or else we're gonna have to send for dinner.
Okay, so we want to keep the provide historic restoration workshop. All right, so collaborate with Main Street and the Dells Arts Center on further downtown restoration projects. So we have, you know, there is going to be a small pocket park within on East 2nd Street. And then we are also working on, of course, the walking tour in conjunction with the Dalles Arts Center and the City of the Dalles. I don't think we have any ongoing projects with Main Street as of yet. That doesn't mean never. Should we keep that on our short-term goal list? Okay. Support the restoration and preservation of the Civic Auditorium. Should we remove this to ongoing goals?
I think that's a good one. And are they now done with the restoration or are they still?
They're still
on it?
working it. Yeah.
So there's always something to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So keep it on the short-term goal for now, or put it in ongoing?
I think it could go on ongoing because it is a historic building.
Correct, yeah. Okay. And I will. Okay, so support the creation of walking tours of historic properties, pioneer cemetery, and encourage historic building open houses. So we are working on the historic walking tour, altogether the Dalles, which includes many of our historic properties as well as the murals downtown. We have not had any like walking tour of the Pioneer Cemetery, and I'm not sure about encouraging historic building open houses. I know, Eric, you hosted one, correct?
Yeah, and I think this kind of dates to back when there used to be an obligation for people that were on the special assessment program with SHPO to have open houses, and that is no longer a requirement.
Okay.
So,
So maybe, should I just take that out then?
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Although it would be nice to have.
I think that would be a
Open
nice
houses.
component. I mean, it's definitely been an interest of the Dallas Arts Center in conjunction with that project.
It was
to
wonderful seeing
incorporate
Eric's
that.
building too when it was open.
Yeah.
It was awesome seeing all that historical
Yeah.
facts and information there. It was really fun.
And St. Paul's Chapel downtown, an 1875 building. There's several of us who would be really happy to be there. If there were other, I mean, it would be kind of nice to have some other buildings in the downtown area. This is at Fifth and Union. To be involved in something like that.
Yeah,
Is there a
maybe.
way-
Oh,
I was gonna say, is there a way we can get it like an open night, open house night for historical buildings? Like they do the witches walk and,
Right.
buildings are open. So I'm like, just thinking maybe open house night or something. I don't know, but that would be.
The PEO did,
Yes, I was gonna ask, whatever happened to, they didn't make enough money, they didn't make enough people.
I think COVID kind of knocked a lot of that out.
Ah.
But they did
Mhm.
they had a theme. I know the year they did,
Mhm.
bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs, they had Chuck on the corner was the first one. We were the newest one with Trevitt. So it would have been about 4 years ago. And they had, some of those go around.
I think it would be neat during the day. I mean, the nighttime thing would be fun, but if you want to look at the stained glass windows in any of the local churches
Mm.
during the daytime, it would be really neat. And there are a group of churches right there that do have stained glass windows. Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting to explore, like you have downtown the Dalles that's doing those Friday nights, right? With the downtown, like we have all these historic buildings, right? That building you just described is down there. It seems like a really nice, impactful thing that, would give people opportunities to showcase what's going on. It's pretty large impact, pretty low cost, and is very engaging, which would bring a lot of attention to the work that's being done.
right.
You had said they used to have all the people that are restoring old homes, that were with SHPO, you got certain tax
Yeah.
breaks and things that you had to do it every single year. You'd open your house to the public every year. And we had 5 kids and it was this kind of like, this is fun. So that's what I remember.
Mm.
But I agree. I like it when they open the buildings downtown. They've done it. It's not unprecedented. It's been going on for years, but we should get some structure where we keep it going. I don't know.
And I know that
I don't disagree with you, but it's going to be very hard to get this re-rolling and go back to what we used to do. It just isn't happening. If you look around here at the amount of restaurants that we don't have any longer in this community, there is something going on that is more than just this landmark commission capabilities of overcoming. And I would like to see us go back and look at the old buildings again too. But I'm sure somebody else has explored it and said, won't be anybody there except you and I, so.
Well,
I would just push back on that, Commissioner, and that the Dallas Arts Center has had a great deal of interest in that, and a lot of people have really had interest. I think we could certainly start, take a look, tie it in with maybe some events that are happening, and
Right,
go from there.
The the organizers of.
Oh,
any
that's
of the
fine. That's fine. Yeah.
support it.
Well,
But
and we do have the
we're
goal of,
the
Mm.
instigators of
Yeah,
it.
that's supporting. We would be able to support, but not organize.
I think the encourage is then the key
Yes.
word in that goal.
Yeah, and maybe knowing that the Historic Landmarks Commission would encourage like an event like this, we could maybe kind of mesh it together with the walking tour hard opening. That's you're walking to the house, and wouldn't it be so cool if the house's lights were on and the door was open and with some wine and fresh baked cookies and maybe some ham sandwiches? Maybe I'm just getting a little hungry. But yeah. So we can keep that. Support the creation of, okay, we got that. So encourage preservation and continued use of Rockfort by using the adopted preservation and maintenance plan. So,
Yeah, maybe just move that one to
To ongoing, yeah.
Ongoing.
I agree.
I'm just going to highlight the ones we want to move to ongoing. So it's a little quicker. Okay. So encourage or support addition of a student representative. I don't really know the background on this, so I would love to hear it.
It was just trying to get the youth involved in historical things going on in town, but I think we might have tried to talk to the high school and there wasn't any biters, like the kids just don't care to give up their free time.
Mhm.
Help with cleaning up the cemetery, there's hours that they have to do to graduate. There's
That
volunteer
all
work.
went
Community service.
buttered away.
Well, they're
Yeah.
still doing it at the landmark. There's a group coming in of the National Honor Society kids come and clean up the garden beds. They're coming up, they do that every year.
That's delightful. I didn't know that.
It's
That's
not through us, but it happens. It's just part of the town. So
Yeah, I'm not in touch if, I don't know, do the high schoolers still have to do community service or since
I
COVID?
can't find that they do anymore.
I can confirm that they do.
They do.
And you,
still-
Julie?
Yeah, they have to in order to graduate.
Yeah.
And then not only when
There's a
you find that
resource.
commission
Oh, yeah.
service, you gotta find the person there to supervise it. You can't just say, well, there are 15 kids, let them go over there and do something.
Exactly.
You gotta go over there and show them, hand them the tools they need and so on and so. And it just became too complicated in this day and age.
So it did, here's a side story, Bob. Mr. Eggy was over there and he's a retired biology teacher. Most of you know that. So they came and Alan said, he was giving instructions to the group of National Honor Society kids. And he said, you all have to bring a hoe. And they're all like, Mr. Eggy. Because apparently a hoe is to them what's something else. And a couple other things about the footwear, don't wear thongs. It went south. I said, I'm so glad you are retired, Mr. Eggy.
Well,
I'm
so.
blushing.
So what if we said encouraging participation, encouraging youth participation rather than encourage or support an addition of a student representative? To me, that reads like they're sitting on the right.
Well, I think that was the intention really, is that
Oh,
we
okay.
get somebody that comes every month and sits with us and deliberates and all of that. And we were going to see if that was needed some kind of ordinance revision to do that or,
Oh, okay.
but I think we just also had trouble finding a youth or a student to do it.
I think
It
when we
could
added
be-
this
it could
COVID
be-
hit.
Yeah, it could even be a college student or something too.
Oh, okay.
Good
Okay.
idea.
So encourage or support an addition of a student representative on the Historic Landmarks Commission. Okay.
One thing I'll just share that the Dallas Arts Center, we're bringing on a board member from the high school. It's sort of a pilot thing. So I'm happy to share what our experience is and how that worked. And sometimes it's just a conversation. I made a presentation at the Rotary and there was a student that was there and she was excited and wants to get engaged. So it's just kind of, maybe that's the role of the commission, is just being aware and seeing how you can bring them into the fold. It doesn't have to be a formal program, but we can just keep these goals in front of us.
Okay. All right, well, we can keep that right where it is. So provide informational signage at Pioneer Cemetery regarding history, landscaping, and maintenance burials. So, yeah, I don't think we've installed any additional informational signage at the Pioneer Cemetery, but since we are, focusing on the maintenance of the cemetery, I think this is appropriate to keep on a short-term goal. No?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. So paint and provide maintenance for existing fencing and walkways at the Pioneer Cemetery.
Yep,
Yes.
keep that.
Okay. Encourage the fabrication and installation of historic plaques throughout the community, including Pulpit Rock and Amaton Field.
Tan,
Amotan.
isn't it?
PAN?
Not sure.
It's
Hamilton.
Amaton.
This is how it was last year, so I didn't make this mistake.
Weren't we looking at like designs, like styles of plaques at one point in time, or didn't we request that? I don't recall what we did last year, if we were requesting like to see a couple examples or what we did with that.
I think they might have been the plaques, like the building plaques that we were
Yeah.
trying to work out.
Supplier,
Oh,
I couldn't find anyone else that would.
Hmm. Mhm.
We've had a lot of discussion about short histories, I don't know, 100 words or less, that would be able to be put on a plaque and attached to our historic buildings down through towns. And I don't think it ever did anything more than talk about it at Landmark Commission.
yeah.
And it would be nice and it would be important that we do this, but I don't know what kind of footwork it's going to take to make it happen.
Yeah, I know it can be complicated with signage. Not a ton of grants love to cover just specifically signage. So maybe if we could think of something creative that would, or if people could have the option to pay for their own plaque as well.
It's a tough one. I tried.
Yeah.
I was on the chamber board and it was crickets. No one, and they have beautiful ones in Brownsville where Alan's from. And we had pictures of that. And we've talked to Dawn over the years about it. It's a tricky one. I mean, I still have my Ben Snipes sign that was there when we bought the house. I'm not sure when that was put on, but there's a lot of existing signs around town. I don't know the answer.
Well,
Can I ask an off question here at this point? Did the city fall heir to John Lindell's diary? Did he leave that to the city landmark commission? John Lindell, our local plumber.
Yeah.
Had kept a history in his lifetime, is that what I want to call it, Eric? Of what business was in what building
Yeah.
all the way from the time he started that.
His sister could be a good resource there.
I don't know, but it's too valuable to be even thought that it could get lost. And I just wondered, because that is the stuff you would need to make these historic plaques work.
I could follow up on that.
Okay, now I'm off. I'll quiet down
Yes,
again.
I can find John's stuff, because he lived in our house for a long time, and he's, connected to the whole, everyone loves Johnny Lindell. Sad when he died.
Well, I was under the impression and the understanding that when he did divide up their properties, that the Historic Landmark Commission would get these diaries. And there was a question about how do we commandeer somebody to take over his place. And so John passes today, who's going to start writing this down for the next?
He did a historic talk when I had the tea parlor in Ben Snipes' house, and had all the historic people there, and he was talking about, and then he started, because when he was first married, he was talking about him and his wife, what they took out, because they were just kids. And he was like, used to be pocket doors here. They used to be we put them on the barn behind. I'm like, no. Of course, as he got older, he became this historic giant in of preserving things, but what a
Yeah.
lovely man.
Okay,
I'll try to follow that up and find those.
please
diaries.
do that. Please do that for the Landmark Commission. Now I'll quiet down and get back on track.
So we can create a concept design for the historic building plaques on our short-term goals, since it seems like that's at the forefront of a lot of folks' minds, our
Right.
commissioners' minds.
And I think we had been, last I thought that Don was going to reach out to the skill center or something at the college. and
Okay.
See if they could make replicas of what our signs look like.
Okay, well, I can do some follow-up on that. Okay, so encourage the preservation and restoration of City Hall, specifically council chambers.
Ooh, hey.
Done.
We could just
Is there any
mark that
further
off.
plans that
Check.
we should delete maybe the council chambers and say another part of this building?
Yeah, they're doing like some office renovations on the upstairs. That's it.
Well, I mean, is it worthwhile keeping this on our list then? I mean, if we don't know what we want to do at City Hall, why?
Mention it.
Could we just move, encourage preservation and restoration of City Hall to like the long term or ongoing or something like that?
I think that makes sense. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Going to think. Okay. So apply for a grant to create a preservation plan for the Dalles. So we haven't applied for a grant to make a preservation plan. I can look into it. I guess I am unfamiliar with what a preservation plan is. So I need to do some homework.
Yeah, I think the last time we went to one of the certified local government workshops, they said something about they were encouraging communities to make preservation plans.
Okay.
So I think that's why it ended up in one of our goals.
What organization?
It was the certified local government program through SHPO. We're a certified local government, so that's why we kind of do these reviews like for that project rather than SHPO doing the reviews. So as part of that, we have obligations under SHPO, right? We have to have a certain number of qualified commissioners. But then they also give us some funding, right? They give funding for staff positions and also
Grants.
a grant.
Yeah, we have opportunities to apply for grants. And so that's the major carrot for certified local governments.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that we do this goal setting is to kind of focus in on
Yes,
grant opportunities.
it's required. Yes.
Okay, we'll keep that on. So long-term goals support the Fort Dalles Museum and vehicle storage display building.
Before you go to that, I checked the spelling and it's Amotan, Amotan field.
Oh, thank you.
For the two first long-term goals, I'd like to move both of those to ongoing because I don't see why those should just be long-term. I think we're just going to continue ongoing with those.
I think that makes sense. Does it? All right. And so I'll move, I'm just highlighting it now, but I will move it at the end here. Okay, so encourage continued preservation and compatible infill of historic Chinatown. Should that be also long-term? I mean, I can't see that just stopping in
Yeah,
5
I think
years.
so, yeah.
Okay, at least I hope not. And then encourage restoration and preservation of the Pioneer Cemetery and establish an inventory link / listing on the city's website. So we could move that to a short-term goal if you're interested, because I can make stuff, I can add things on the website for our Historic Landmarks Commission.
Can I ask a question at this point? And it's all of us here.
Yeah,
We're always dumped on and told us we were responsible for Pioneer Cemetery. The Historic Landmark Commission inherited the Pioneer Cemetery because the city council started talking to me. And anyhow, we finally got on the city budget. And that's the important part, and we got on the city budget, so we have some monies that we should spend each year at that cemetery to upgrade or do something of that nature. How are we doing on that particular aspect? Dawn and I, and I'm not comparing you, I'm just saying Dawn and I used to go over, well, we're gonna do this, and that's gonna look for as our expenditure so that we don't fall off the edge of the budget. They haven't spent their money the last 2 years, they're not in the budget anymore, if you understand what I'm saying. And so are we actually showing city council that we're wise and prudent in spending the money they're giving us to spend?
Yes, we have spent money to maintain the Pioneer Cemetery. I can give you an update on the next historic landmarks meeting on what those numbers look like, though, if you'd like. I don't have them at my fingertips, but I can look into it. That's fine. And I can provide an update.
Well, that is a concern of mine. After I worked so hard to get on that budget, I damn sure don't want it to fall off.
Well, I mean, yeah, the last maintenance that we did of the Pioneer Cemetery was, invoiced and, taken out of that budget line item.
Okay, well,
So it has
you
been,
understand my concern.
oh, I hear that. Yes.
Oh. And we're all responsible. It isn't just me. We're all responsible on this commission. You might remember, Eric, I said, well, if we're gonna be responsible, we're gonna be responsible with one head. And so I've been that head for quite some time, but we're all responsible. It's just to talk to anybody about cemetery, you talk to us all. And I want us all to be informed.
Oh, I can definitely provide you more updates too on that front. And I do think it would be a quicker, easier thing to list, have an inventory list on the city website, and have a picture maybe of each gravestone that's on there. That's an easy lift for myself. But the funding part and the continued maintenance of it, I can provide updates.
And I just want to offer, like, what you're offering right now, Chairman McNary, is kind of what I was really speaking to, is that you have so much knowledge and you know all of this, like what you worked hard to establish. And I think that would be really important for us to really document this and really think about, if we have a vice that's interested and ready, then how do we prepare him and continue that work?
Thank you.
And there is a cemetery map, which I think has been digitized. If it hasn't been, I have the copy of the original that's been updated, so.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I think that'd be good. I can
I
put it
think
in.
we should try to work around maybe side door, back door, front door. But with that cemetery, there is people that are traveling and part of the tour groups that are getting on and off these boats. And I think if we could somehow figure out where to fit it, that we should tell them that we have a Pioneer Cemetery.
Mhm.
And we, not only that, but we actually have a history, if you want to call it, of who these people were that were buried there.
There's a large monument in there that lists all the people who are buried.
Names.
Names, people, but not.
I think people would go with great interest to know when that person or what that person was doing the day before they died. The day they died, Arlene did a lot of that. She read old chronicles until I can't believe how she did it. But she formulated a little bit of history for most every one of the people up there, didn't she, Eric?
Then is there copies of this information?
Pardon?
I think there should be in the city records
Okay.
because she turned that stuff over.
Okay. What was her name?
It isn't something that we could hand every tourist as they get off the boat. But it's
Erlene
something
Wasser.
that they would know that was there. They might want to ask about it.
Good idea.
Absolutely. We talk about people engaging with history, right? And this is just another, this is a great I don't want to say asset, but it's just like part of our town stories. Yeah.
And another thing that is a 5 minutes, but it's really important in this community, is Pulpit Rock.
Mhm.
And there they need another little handout that said why Pulpit Rock is and why it's sitting in the middle of the street. Like any dumb Methodist, they always sit in the middle of the street. They can't get on either side.
It's getting filled in too. It's getting shorter and shorter. Is it sinking?
Well, one good thing about Pulpit Rock is it will be on the walking tour and there'll be a plaque near it. And so people can scan the QR code and have that history right at their fingertips without having to like having a paper flyer. So that's
Plaque made from.
where was it made from?
Yeah, can we get on that for the houses?
Well, yes. Yeah, it's all on the walking tour. So the plaques are made with what was the company name? Blue.
So it was Oregon Blueprint.
Oh, yeah, Oregon Blue.
So the interesting thing, you were talking about plaques and these different things. So each of those plaques only cost us, I think it was about $12. So it's a very inexpensive material. You can do a lot of different things with it. It's UV protected. So the inks are very preserved. And that concept kind of came from a trip that I had to Pendleton, and their historic landmark signs are very clear and they're very bright. They're an aluminum, but they're well designed and they really catch your attention. I mean, I'm what's that? No, that's actually just in town, just like we have. So, but their signs they catch your eye and you are drawn to it. I think their emphasis was more engagement and less having it fit in with kind of what the building looked like and colors and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of the framework. If we're looking at design and we're looking at with good design, you have to have good idea of what are we trying to achieve, right? If we're trying to achieve engagement, getting people's attention and drawing them in, then maybe that looks a little bit different than what we had before. But you're talking about cost effectiveness. We did all of those signs. We've printed 35 thus far. We have 70 sites that are on that. There is the potential, Chairman McNary, that could be added as an option with the walking tour for the Pioneer Cemetery, that you could go there. We can add almost infinitum of like what we want to put on those. You can add up to like 100 photos. You can add on a ton of material. So I mean, there's a lot of resource, and we just need to organize it. And if we get those information, then we can put that on the tour. We can certainly find budget funds. We already have written 2 grants for this project. And we've got the mural project, which is all these history stories, and those are all part of the tour now. We're just finishing that up, and we've been waiting on the Mural Society and the Wall Dogs to get that done. And we're ready to do the launch and get people interested and get that happening. So
There's one more little piece of history that I think should be made an effort to preserve is Strawberry Rock. Is that what they call that landmark for where they started measuring how many chain lengths east, how many chain lengths west? Set in the alley there between 11th and 12th, right behind the old Baptist church. That was the, what do you want to call it, lodestone, where everybody measured from to get their property value, rights and distances. You familiar with this, Julie?
No, I was just trying to, I didn't, you're talking about a surveyor's point.
A monument,
Yeah,
What do you call it?
like a monument, but
But it's just on the ground? I mean, I know that area because the Walrus. used to live
right
there.
now, with no keeping, it is completely vine covered. But if you peel off the vine, underneath there is the markings that they use to, okay, we'll start measuring now, this is it. And they reference that, where is our reference in
a mapping datum kind of thing.
yeah, in down in not Oregon City, but in that area anyhow, when measured out the whole state.
Willamette Meridian.
Yeah.
Meridian.
And so it isn't gonna go anywhere unless somebody says you want to drill a hole and blast it. But nobody really knows it's there. And you think about the historic character. I want to buy your property. Well, where's your property run from? Well, so many chain links this way, so many chain links with the best compass we got that way. It all had to start somewhere, and that's really close to about the place to get started.
Mhm.
So that's where, between 11th and 12th.
Right in the back parking lot of the old Baptist church. And I don't mean old, but I mean the Baptist church now that I guess is an Asian church or whatever they're calling it.
What's the cross street?
12th Street, the church faces 12.
Uh-huh.
There's an alley there.
It's the other street. The perpendicular street to 12th, you know?
Well, it's just up the hill or a stone throw from the Methodist parking lot right there. It's in that
Oh, okay.
alley. If you'd walk up the alley from the high
Oh,
school,
I think I know what you're talking about.
Google Map, all right.
yeah, we're timed out.
I
Oh,
was gonna do that.
Okay, so, okay. 12th Street
pardon?
By the high school. I mean, it's just,
by the high school?
just south of the high school, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
East of the high school, east
South
of,
and east.
Yeah.
Oh, so Big Dream Church for Christ?
there's a big brick church there now, and they've just changed the name, but
Is it Washington?
So it's East 12th and Federal?
yeah, Washington and
The 12th,
It's right there.
11th, 12th? Yeah, that one.
So this is on Federal on East 12th.
yeah, that's the church. Now get in the backyard.
Run.
Go get in the backyard.
Down the alley.
There you go. Yeah.
So this parking lot?
Yeah, you're going fine. You get down there, that white van is there. You're right in that is in that area right there. If you peel back the ivy, you'll find what they call a strawberry rock. It's a lava rock that got pelted with lots of rain or lots of water at the time it was still hot. And it come off with looking like a strawberry.
Huh.
Everything was measured from that point.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's something. I've
That
never
is really
heard.
cool. Yeah.
Huh.
That's awesome.
And I don't know whose property really it'd be on in the alley. It might be city property, who knows?
Well, yeah, maybe we can,
Pardon?
Wouldn't it be the city? The right alley's the right away.
well, if it's in the alley or maybe it's on the church property, depends where it is, but yeah,
But these go back to the point where this town was getting started.
yeah.
That's something worth preserving or educating people about. I don't think it's gonna start a big.
And the
stampede
same
of
way with
tourists.
Pulpit Rock,
Mm-hmm.
when this town was getting started, there were, this where the thing all started.
Well,
Unless,
one of the things that this commission used to do is approve landmarks, right? Not just approve people's,
Hey, let's
kind
get
of
that
things.
power back.
it's that,
That'd be
well.
fun.
We have
do
it.
Have that power.
Yeah.
Fill out landmarks applications and have hearings and
We could maybe
designate
get this
these things as
strawberry
local
rock or
landmarks.
something like that. That's something new. People.
Great
like
idea.
that.
Right. And just to offer, when we were doing the walking tour, we were limited by SHPO on what we could add because it had to be historically designated. So there were buildings and structures that we couldn't add because they weren't designated, either by the state, the city, or national.
it would be interesting if I knew the sources of looking at an old title, a title to a property, and see how they described that property and where that property was. But I wouldn't even know where to start searching for that sort of stuff. The county'd look at you kind of strange, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that might be a good place to start, or the title company. for the lot that it's on right now and then work your way
Correct.
back.
But it's just an interesting spot to me. Okay, are we done with the goal setting?
Well, yeah, we still got ongoing goals, but do we want to add anything
Yeah,
about
hungry.
Strawberry Rock? I didn't want to move on.
Let's talk about food.
Okay. Okay. So continuous goals. So facilitate educational assistant to help restorers with assessment and other historic preservation needs. Sounds good.
Yeah, and I think we could probably add that we should have it online or something like a cheat sheet, like Scott was saying, or you were saying, someone was saying, like, for Windows, you can
We just
contact
talked-
these people. For
Mm-hmm.
bricks, you can contact these folks.
Yes. So, okay. Educational
References.
educational resources shall be available online. Does that capture what you're saying? Okay. Okay, so provide annual recognition of historic restorations, including on-site acknowledgement and media coverage.
Something we haven't done, but we probably should.
Yeah. I'd say keep it ongoing.
Okay. Encourage historic restoration for downtown by providing historic background research. And that's part of the function of my position. So I feel like that's met. Encourage the collection and preservation of local history, including irreplaceable oral and written histories. I feel like we do that often,
Lundell thing.
Yeah.
especially with the walking tour and things. So update historic inventories and encourage new nominations to local and national registry districts.
It's the one that could cover Strawberry Rock.
Yes. Maintain certified local government status. Yes. Actively support Historic Month and local history.
Yeah,
Oh,
we were just talking about that, right?
Historic Month?
I don't know.
There is a National Historic Preservation Month, which I think is October or something.
It's later
Have
in
to
the
look,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, historic organizations get together annually. I think it's going to be in February, isn't it, Eric?
Yeah,
what's
February
that called?
11th. History After Hours.
History After Hours.
Oh, okay.
That,
This year it's on the 11th at the original courthouse at 3:30 after the regularly February history program.
Should this be an open invitation to the commission?
Mhm.
Could you provide me an email with details on that?
Yep.
Thank you. And I can then forward it on to y'all. Okay. Assist with historic plaque costs and availability. So that's kind of what we talked about earlier. Keep it on. Okay. Keep the historic walking tour current in all formats. That's what we're actively working on.
I might just offer that we've got, the walking tour is kind of one sort of, we've expanded on the 3 existing and what all the work that Dawn did. And I think just kind of making it almost like a clearinghouse because, that the chamber has one. I think there was something with what is it called? The downtown Main Street, and just kind of seeing what we can do to kind of help with that,
Sounds famous for having lots of committees that.
Yeah,
review.
exactly. Exactly.
Getting
Yeah.
things Approved, you've got to go through a labyrinth of things.
Yeah.
To simplify is a good thing.
Right. And if any organization in our city would be kind of the leader, I would think the Historic Landmark Commission would be the leader on that.
Nominate you the leader.
Okay.
You already had elections.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, we've been doing it already.
Yeah.
We've
Well, and you-
expanded our list and we've created this walking tour.
Yeah. And, I think also working within your own networks too, of just if they're interested in the historic walking tour, just to letting people know too. I know you guys are all very connected socialites. But okay, so increase communication on all urban renewal projects, vision and goals.
I think this was just to kind of get feedback on what they're trying to do and if it was going to be conflicting in the historical district.
Okay.
So if we've had really any.
We nominate you to do that.
Well,
No, we did not.
I thought we nominated you to attend the urban renewal meetings.
I'm only at the Urban Renewal Budget Committee meetings.
I don't know. That's what I had in mind, but you're on the right track.
We'll make him a hat that says Historic Landmark Commission. Wear to that meeting then.
Well, you know, the urban renewal projects, I don't know if it's always been this close knit in the past, but the way it's working now in our office is that, you know, they need all approval with the community development department and historic landmarks committee prior to, you know, receiving a grant in most cases. And so they have to be cleared through land use approval and historic review. And that's in, you know, I think that could be an option for the Pioneer building as well. You know, they had to come here first before they could look into any other opportunities.
And I think that's what this addressed is.
Yes.
There were several instances where urban renewal had already provided the funding before historic landmarks approval, and we kind of went a little sideways about some of those projects. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a great, just keeping it in there is good. So increase communication with Main Street for all projects, vision and goals pertaining to historic projects.
One thing I've noticed, and this probably isn't the proper place, but if people go through the right protocol and present to the historic landmarks and the city council and all the powers that be, you know, and that's great. But there's a whole bunch of people that just do it and then they have the beg forgiveness later, but no, everyone looks at it like, eh. And I think that poor guy that we, you know, made him jump through hoops, and then the guy next door has just put up a huge fence and this and that, and they get away. Is there any agency for us to say, I mean, is there any way of policing that? You know what I mean? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Code enforcement.
Yes, that's what I was just going to talk about. So there's a couple of different, you know, we have conditions of approval, right? So conditions of approval means that it's not approved if these conditions aren't met, or if you are building in a way that was not illustrated on your building elevations. And now there could be another instance where there's like a code enforcement infraction where they install like a fence that's too high, and that's all land use. And I've written those letters before, but it is complaint based. And so that's just kind of like a overview of that function. But I mean, things do go through the cracks because it's complaint based unless it's like a site plan, it's like a review function like we do here.
The public works, if you see something, or what's the protocol for us if we see things that should normally come before us and go through all the.
Oh, you should tell me. Yep. Okay. Yeah. And so then I can send them a letter, and they have 15 days to respond. And if they relapse on 15 days, then further enforcement follows, which can mean litigation if it's egregious enough.
You notice the fence in front of Vote Hall? I hear you. You notice the fence in front of Vote Hall? This huge iron fence is kind of, it had a few poles and all of a sudden it's done. I thought,
oh,
this historic.
Well, let's touch base and we can talk about it. But yeah, yeah, we can talk about code enforcement if anybody sees something. This is a complaint from a community member or in a commission member. Yep.
You and then.
We could cost the city a lot of money in the long term if we don't hold up the things that we are required to do as this landmark commission, because then the state is going to take our authority to judge this away from us and take it all to Salem, and they'll judge for us, but they'll also send us the bill for doing it.
Yep.
So we must keep our end of it clean. In other words, if we tell somebody that that's not the way it's going to be done and they do it anyhow, then we have to take and go to the lengths that you ever have to do to get it corrected. Or else the state will say your landmark commission's gone and it's going to be all done in Salem.
Well, and you have recently seen an application that was a result of a code enforcement infraction for putting in some vinyl windows in the rear of their property, if that's coming to mind. And so that's
how that came.
it was from a code enforcement. So yeah, it's just not normally like we don't like to just say, oh, they did this already. It's coming down on the hammer. But yeah, that's how our code enforcement works. We want to bring people into the process and get them into compliance. Anyways, okay. So moving right along, we are almost done. You guys are rock stars. So increase communication with Main Street for all project vision and goals pertaining to historic projects. Looks like we all nodded in agreement to that prior. And then historic and procedural commissioner training opportunities. Does that sound good? And then support restoration and preservation of the civic auditorium. And that is the conclusion of our goals, unless anybody would have anything they would like to add.
Would it be helpful to group? I just noticed, for example, in the short-term goals, there are, I think, 4 different things about the Pioneer Cemetery. If they were all kind of clustered together, it might,
Read
you
a
might
little
find some redundancies and might want to keep them separate, but
Well, and would you guys like me to combine some of these goals? That's not like, I won't go too far as to remove a lot of verbiage, but just kind of combine, maybe have some meatier goals, like a couple sentences long regarding the.
oh, look at me.
Yeah, that sounds fine with me. I think.
Yeah,
Just so we're not words.
tidy it up and bring it back to us,
Okay,
please.
yes, I can do that.
And if it's necessary, we'll even vote and approve it. I don't know if it would be, but we'll have to check parliamentary wise after the list has been programmed up, whether it has to be approved by the whole commission. We'll find that, figure that out.
Okay, I can provide an updated list. All right,
Now, are we done
yes.
on that? Okay, I'm going to ask everyone if they're willing to give up our discussion time for this evening, since we've been here too long. You got your coat on, that isn't fair. And have you got a tentative date in February when we might meet again?
Yes. Oh. Thank you. I didn't print out the last page of the agenda.
I don't know, we're gonna get back in routine, that's what I'm saying. We're on routine now,
Would be the 22nd.
okay? Just so that's in the minutes. Okay. I have no further comments, and I'd appreciate if someone would make a motion that we adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, you're gonna make,
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll second it.
during the meetings, hold your horses.
Oh,
Center
okay.
guy.
Yeah, I second it. We can go home now.
Okay.
You didn't ring the gavel.
Yeah.
Oh.
Knock that thing.
Now we can go home. Been a fun time.
Thank you.